Hey guys, how are you guys? How are y'all doing? Gabe here. I've had a couple requests from people wanting me to make a video slideshow, kind of explaining my involvement in Uganda, what I do there, why I go there, what the Lord is doing there in Uganda through the Messianic communities there. Let me start at the very beginning, and I'm going to try to make this video as quick as possible, kind of an abbreviated history of my involvement there. And hopefully, if you have any questions, you're welcome to email me. My email address is just gabrielrutledge@gmail.com, or you can just give me a call if you ask around. You can find my cell phone number, but I'm not going to throw it out there on YouTube. But anyways, about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess it's been, the man standing here next to me in this photo is John Swaga. John Swaga is a biology teacher. He's a high school biology teacher for a government school there in Uganda, and he contacted me through Facebook about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even more, and he said, basically, we need Americans to come. We need anybody who's knowledgeable in the faith to come and disciple believers and provide materials for studying, and we need Bibles. We need Hebrew study tools and things like this. And he started contacting me. Never really asked me for money or anything like that. He just wanted materials. He just wanted teaching and discipleship. So I kind of just shrugged him off. I was working a job and I wasn't able to take any time off to actually travel. I'd never been to the entire continent of Africa. I had no interest in going whatsoever. And just kind of kept pushing it off. And finally got to a position where I was able to take a considerable amount of time off. And I finally booked a plane ticket. This is after maybe 2 or 3 years of conversing with him, just back and forth, through email. I finally set up time. So I know no one from Uganda at this point. I've never met John Swaga in person. I don't know anyone else from Uganda. I knew a couple people who lived in Uganda and traveled to Uganda, and had met John Swaga. So I knew that he was a real person, and I knew that he was a reputable person as far as they could tell. They just met him briefly. So I felt a little bit more confident in going, but I booked a plane ticket, round trip, 2 weeks in Uganda. God softened Stacy's heart somehow to where she let me go, and I flew 6,000 miles, to a different continent in Africa, a place I've never been, people I'd never met, and I started a journey, a 2-week stay in Uganda that would ultimately change my life. This is the first day that I met John Swaga in person. We spent the day together just traveling from the capital city of Uganda, which is Kampala, over back east towards his hometown and towards the city of Iganga. And back behind us is the Nile River. We're standing on the banks of the Nile River. And so I just want to give you a visual who John Swaga is. John Swaga sort of serves as the closest thing I can think of is like an apostle of sorts. And I don't mean in like the sense of like apostles like we see this day and age who want to teach like prosperity doctrines and stuff like that. Like he's a legitimate apostle. Like he travels around and he edifies and teaches and disciples other leaders in the different fellowships in Uganda. And he is amazing at what he does, has an amazing heart, and is just an amazing guy. So where is Uganda? I'm glad you asked. This is the country of Uganda right here, which is shaded in red. As you see, it is in East Africa. It is oftentimes referred to as the Pearl of Africa. It sits on the northern shore of the big body of water you see there called Lake Victoria. And Uganda itself has freedom of religion. There is no state religion. The president is Anglican Christian, and his name is Museveni. But here in eastern Uganda, however, the religion of the people is predominantly Muslim. As you can see, its proximity to Sudan and Somalia and Saudi Arabia ultimately. Islam has been a part of the Ugandan culture for hundreds of years, and it is very prevalent in eastern Uganda. It's really prevalent all over Uganda, much more so than the United States of America, for instance. But Islam is a big deal there, especially in the city which I travel to, which is called Iganga. Uganda is divided into several different tribal territories, which all speak a different language. I'm told that there are something like 52 different languages spoken in Uganda alone, and all of them completely different to where you couldn't really understand what they're saying. Separated geographically. The British came in and colonized the nation of Uganda, and they made English a standardized language in Uganda. Even though everyone still speaks their tribal languages, English is a language which unifies the entire country. And those who have received any form of education have been trained in English, and they can speak, I would say a vast majority of people can speak English, but they all speak a native language as their heart language, as their first language. So everyone in Uganda speaks English as a second language. So the British left, as you may recall, in the 1960s, I think late 1960s, and then Uganda went through a series of civil wars and various dictators like Idi Amin, just really, really rough people. And we have the president now that's been there for 30 years. One of the very first things he did was, of course, abolish term limits. But he's been a good president. He's held the country together. But Uganda is a developing nation, and it always feels like it's right on the cusp. It's one step away from complete anarchy, and you kind of sense that when you're there. But let me take you a little bit closer into Uganda here. This is the capital city. This is where I fly into, actually just south of it. Kampala is a very large city, something similar in size to maybe, I don't know, Miami or Orlando. And then I usually travel east through Jinja, across the Nile River, through Jinja, and then about right here sits the city of Iganga. And Iganga looks like this. This is the main square. This is the market square of Iganga. And it's 85%, I'm told, 85% Muslim in this city of Iganga, within the city district itself. On the outlying areas, it's a little bit less. It's more Christian, Pentecostal Christian than it is Muslim, but in the city itself, it's around 85% Muslim. And you can always spot some of the Muslims, they wear hats like this here. But there's mosques everywhere in this city, and it is a very, very impoverished city. This is a very common scene in Uganda, just to open marketplaces like this. And this is a taxi park here, where you take a taxi bus. You can travel across the country in one of these buses for relatively cheap, as long as you survive. And yeah, so this is the market square. I've been here many times. This is me on the back of a boda coming into the city of Iganga. This is a boda. They call them bodas, which is just a nickname for a motorcycle taxi driver. And this is one of the biggest sources of employment for men in Uganda. This is me. I had the opportunity, when I came to my hotel here in Iganga, I had the opportunity to meet with some of the leaders of the Jewish community which live up north in the city of Mbale. And these men came down and greeted me, and I was able to send them back with some literature, some pro-Yeshua literature that explained who the Messiah is. But they are a Jewish community that's number in the thousands, and have been practicing the Jewish faith for as far back as they can remember. And this is one of the kippas. I hope you can see my mouse. This is one of the kippas that they make, that's sitting on my head here. They hand make these, and they sell them to support the orphans that they care for. So this is me with them here. The Abu Yudaya, as they're called. So I got in Friday night. I had Shabbat dinner with John Swaga and his family. One of the things that they do in the fellowship here at Beth Yeshua in Iganga, the Messianic fellowship there in the city, every week they follow the Torah portion, and the pre-plotted out Torah portion. This week they were in Bereshit, in the beginning, and he showed me. Well, this is from years past, 2013. Looks like at the top here. What they do every week though is they take notes. They read the entire Torah portion, the entire Haftorah portion, and the entire Brit Chadashah portion. Every week they read it out loud, and then they discuss it. They discuss some of the key points. They write the lesson learnt, and then they have this from year to year, and they always reference back. They write who is present right here. So it's very interesting. But they do that every single week. They take these copious notes, and they refer back to them every year. That's really neat. But some great notes. Like number 13, death came as a result of man's sin, but the the resurrection. Here is the resurrection through Yeshua HaMashiach. So this is the synagogue building. This is what it used to look like. When I first arrived in Uganda, this is what I'd seen pictures of this before, and this was back before the walls were put on. But this was basically just literally, this was a cow pasture with some corn growing in it. Cows were grazing through it, and chickens and everything else. So they built this as a temporary structure, and they began to worship on Shabbat and meet here and say the prayers and conduct Torah services and Torah studies. This is where it all went down. This is Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue, okay? And this is the door here. It looks a little bit different than this now. This was back in 2017 or 18, I believe. But this is where they would make their own bricks. All the congregants would come during the week, and they would actually make their own bricks from their own property. They would get the clay, and they would fire them and do everything else. So the kids would help with this. So these are some of the children playing, and this is Tzipora. She's much bigger now. She's much taller. She is an orphan. Her father died about 3 years ago. Tragically died. So Tzipora. This is inside the synagogue building. You can see it's just made with tree logs and iron sheets nailed to that, corrugated tin sheets nailed to a series of logs framing it out, and just dirt floors. Now it does look different than this now. They've since paved the floors, so there are concrete floors that are really nice, and they have a little concrete stage up there and everything. So this is where they meet on Shabbat. It gets really warm in here. This is back before there was any windows or doors or anything, so it got really warm. You can imagine just sitting in a tin can under the Ugandan sun. But this is what it used to look like. This is an average service. They're dancing and celebrating, and this is what a Shabbat worship service might look like. So as you can see, they worship with joy. And this is me conducting a time of questioning and answers after Shabbat service. This is Emma. He's one of the elders of Beth Yeshua. And this is Daniel. Daniel leads a small fellowship, a growing fellowship in the capital city of Kampala. And these are a lot of leaders and pastors from different fellowships that are all throughout the country of Uganda. And they're asking me questions about the faith, about the relevancy of Torah, how to keep kosher, how to keep Shabbat, and things like this. Like, they're asking me tons and tons of questions because they just need someone to come and teach, and they just are so hungry for revelation, so hungry for truth. And a lot of these men in this room are former Seventh-day Adventist pastors who began to get taught by John Swaga in the apostolic faith and the faith of the apostles, the faith of Yeshua, and have since become more or less Messianic fellowships. And there's upwards of 36 different fellowships of varying sizes throughout the country of Uganda now, because of the various efforts of John Swaga and others. So one of the things I had to do is I had to teach in English, but then I had a translator here. This is Emmanuel Bamwhite, and he's a school teacher as well. He's translating into their native languages for me so they can better understand what I'm trying to say. So these are just some of the people. Like I said, it looks a lot different now, having been back. This is them reading the Torah portion. They read it in their native language, which the language is called Lusoga. And these are the elders of Beth Yeshua Messianic Fellowship. Again, it's John Swaga here in the middle, his wife Maureen. We have James, and we have Daniel, and this is Emmanuel Bamwhite. So this was my very first trip there. I met these people for the very first time, and it was just a blessing to be there and be with them, and just to experience their heart, their hunger for the things of the Lord, the things of Hashem, and just learn more about Yeshua and what he taught. It was just such a blessing to be around them. And it just fueled a desire to want to help them and edify them in their efforts. So when I was there in Uganda, let me find a better picture here. When I was there in Uganda, I asked John Swaga a couple of things. I said, what can we do to help you? And what can we do to strengthen the Messianic movement in Uganda? And one of the things they mentioned was building a training center and a school there on this existing property. This is them kissing the mezuzah as we nail it up on I brought some mezuzot with me, and we nailed them on the doorpost of the synagogue, and teaching the kids how to reach up and touch the mezuzah and touch it to their lips. And they all got a huge kick out of that. And those mezuzahs are still there on the door. But I said, how can we help you? How can we strengthen the communities here? And he said, we need a place of teaching. We need a conference center, basically, where people can come from all around the country and stay for a week and receive some training and take it back to their cities and the villages and replicate the faith there and teach the Torah and teach just the basic fundamentals of the faith. And he said, if we buy an adjacent piece of property, we can build a school that will seat 350 to 400 students of an elementary age in this school. Now you got to remember, this is an 85% Muslim city that we're currently in as I'm taking this photo. And you hear the call to prayer 5 times a day. You hear it every day, even from right here at the synagogue. And so we're talking about a Messianic primary school where Yeshua and the gospel will be taught, the gospel of the kingdom will be taught, the Torah will be taught, and he has a vision to call it Shema Junior School. And he said, but before we were able to build a school, we need to buy the land. And then he said, once we buy the land, we need to drill a well because there's no clean drinking water nearby. Any water that we get, we have to boil because it has typhoid in it. And typhoid is a deadly bacteria that can, really slow down your progress and your ability to learn and conduct school. So we need to drill a well. We need to drill it deep enough to where it's clean. And number 3, we need to build the school. And so I wrote down on a notebook. I wrote down the 3 goals. I wrote down land, $3,000. I wrote down a well, $6,000. And I wrote down Shema Junior School, $15,000. And I said, John, I think we need to pray about having a 5-year goal of raising enough money to complete these 3 goals. And he was just thrilled. This is something that this was not a reality to him. Building all these things and doing these things was not on his radar. And it wasn't on mine either. I was just kind of like, I'm just going to throw it out there and see what the Lord does with this. And I am thrilled and so honored to say that within 2 years, really, maybe 2.5 years of having this conversation with John Swaga, we completed all 3 goals. And I'm just so incredibly amazed at the generosity that people have shown. It just always just kind of seemed like a harebrained idea of mine, and always seemed like, I never really asked people to give a whole lot. Like I never really badgered people about it, but people just gave out of the abundance of their heart, and it was just so neat to see how it's kind of like the tabernacle being built. So many people brought stuff just out of their own fruition, like out of their hearts just urging to bring, and people gave and gave and gave, and it was just a blessing to see that. And so I went back to Uganda in 2019, just this past January. I was there, and I went to the same exact place. Went to Uganda, and I spent 2 weeks there again. And there was a Messianic youth conference being held in the city of Uganda, where Messianic youth from all over the country of Uganda who are attending these various fellowships are coming and learning and being around other youth and their peers. And these are just some of the photos of what was going on. So we ended up having around 160 youth in attendance, ages like 13 up to, I think it's 25, if I'm not mistaken. 160 of them fitting in this little synagogue building. As you remember the synagogue building I showed you earlier, there's no air conditioning, by the way. And it's like hitting 90 degrees every day. But these guys are in there, and they're hungry for truth and hungry for the word. and you can see the floors have been cemented. They no longer have dirt floors. But I had the privilege to lead and be the keynote speaker at this Messianic Youth Conference there that lasted a week, and then I stayed on another week. But I was just so blessed by these young people who came from all around the country, and slept on the floor, slept on these cement floors, on these mats that you see back behind them there. They just couldn't be stopped. They were just hungry, and just true revival in what's going on in Uganda. And I taught them for 2 to 3 hours using Darren Huckey's book called The Four Responsibilities of a Disciple. And every day we took on a different responsibility, of a disciple. What is a disciple of Yeshua expected to do? And I taught through that like 2 or 3 hours per day in the morning, and then we would break for lunch. And then in the evening, in the afternoon and evening, I would teach beginners Hebrew for another 2 to 3 hours. And so they were there, and they were just eating it up, and just an amazing experience. And they all left, and they traveled back to whence they came. But one of the really neat things about the conference is that I got to go and I got to witness them drinking from the well, which many of you all, gave towards making a reality. And this is a cool time-lapse video I took of how this is just the spigot from the well. This is clean drinking water, which, clean drinking water coming out of a tap like this is actually pretty rare in this part of Uganda. But you can just see it's being used really well. So I want to say thank you guys for making this a reality and a possibility for these people to take advantage of this clean drinking water. And I drank it. It was safe. It was good. It was cold, and it was just a blessing. So, and Yeshua says He is the living water, right? Anyone who drinks of Him will thirst no more. One of the neat things that happened when I was there is this. There was this orphanage in the city of Jinja that has around 30 kids in it, and they all showed up to the conference. And we welcomed them and taught them. They're a Christian orphanage, but the director of this orphanage is interested in interweaving the Messianic faith into their Bible study times and teaching their kids to keep Shabbat. And so it's really neat to see that so many people are waking up to truth in Uganda. This is one of the things I was teaching them. Excuse me. It was the difference between a rabbi and a talmid, a rabbi and a student. And so when I was there in Uganda, I was kind of assisting them with the youth conference, but also updating John and getting some updates on where everything's at with the land purchase, the well. This is actually a piece of the land that we bought here. This is where they're playing this game is actually on the plot of land which we purchased for them. And on this plot of land, the school building itself will be built. Now you can see just over here, there's an empty part of property here that's adjacent to this existing land. This is actually open for sale. It's $3,000 to purchase this plot of land here. And that is what John Swaga actually advises we do, is if we're looking to build a guest house or to purchase a guest house, is to purchase that plot of land and to custom build a guest house. So to build a house like this right here that you see, which this is just owned by one of the neighbors, it doesn't belong to the congregation. But to purchase and build a house like this would cost a total of $8,500. And this isn't complete yet. This is going to be complete and it's going to be nice. But to build a house like this with a metal roof, a brick home, with concrete plaster on the walls, and that be squared away and ready to go would be about $8,500. And this is kind of the next phase. So we've bought the land, we drilled the well, we're building a school, and next we want to build a guest home for people like myself and others. When we travel there, we can have a place to stay, but also it'd be a place for Irene. Now Irene right here is she's a widow and she's a mother of 8 kids, and she has one of the biggest hearts of a servant that I've ever encountered. She is full of joy and just is an incredible, incredible woman. She lives off of mending people's clothes. She makes about $3 a day mending clothes for people in her neighborhood. And she has a little sewing machine that is foot-powered sewing machine. And she needs a new home. Right now, all her kids are dispersed into other people's homes that attend the congregation, and they're being cared for by other people. But I would love to see her family reunited under one roof, and this guest home would make that possible for her. So, and she would be kind of the hostess of the home. She'd be able to cook and clean, and just be a hostess for whoever is staying there. And she is a wonderful cook. I will tell you that. I've eaten much of the food that she's cooked, and just an incredible woman. One of the things I taught on when there was memorization of the words of your rabbi, and how that's one of the disciples, one of the responsibilities of a talmid, or a disciple, is to memorize the words of your rabbi. And one of the things I did was I quoted Matthew chapter 5 from memory there, and just saying, if I'm not going to hold you accountable to this if I don't do it myself, so I quoted Matthew chapter 5 from memory. And I was saying, okay, guys, now here's how I memorize Scripture. Here's what I do to memorize Scripture. I was looking around the room and I realized not many of these people have Bibles with them, and I was kind of offended by this. I was kind of like taken aback, and I was like, why didn't they bring their Bibles of all things? Like, it's kind of odd. And so I went to John Swaga about it. I said, John, why did a lot of these kids not have their Bibles with them? And he said, oh, brother, they can't afford Bibles. And I said, what? They don't own Bibles? They traveled all this way to attend a youth conference, and they don't even own the personal copy of their Bible. And worse yet, I'm like teaching them about how important it is to memorize the words of their rabbi, and they don't even have the words of their rabbi in their possession. Yeah, I was so heartbroken by that. And I put on Facebook that evening how about 65-70% of the attendees of this youth conference do not own Bibles, and they just cannot afford a Bible. It's $7 for a Bible, and they just can't afford it. Food, money goes to food, rent, electricity. It goes to malaria medication. They can't afford it. Anytime they get a hold of money, they have to spend it on necessities. So I put a thing on Facebook saying that if we had, I don't remember how many Bibles, I think it was 20 Bibles, we could, I'd like to be able to purchase all these Bibles for these kids and give them out on the last day of the conference. And I said something like, we need $750, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And I woke up the next morning, and Bill, who is one of the deacons here at Dothan Messianic Fellowship, had sent me a text saying that, I don't know what you did, but we just got a series of donations for like $1,400. And I was like, oh, sorry, I should have given you a warning. So anyways, we actually had to tell people to stop giving towards it because, we didn't need the money anymore. We had enough to buy Bibles for everybody. So one of the cool things we did was we went to this Bible Society of Uganda there in the city of Uganda, and I bought them out of Bibles. Literally, I bought out their inventory. And this is what it looks like inside the shop there. They're authorized Bible agent. Authorized with an S. That's the Queen's English there. But yeah, I bought them out of Bibles, and I loaded all these Bibles up in the back of a taxi, and I drove back to the conference, and we gave them out. And some of them we gave them out in English. Some of them were written in their native language, Lisoga, and they were just thrilled. Some of them were just moved to tears over the fact that they were given a Bible for the first time in their life, and they now had the words of their rabbi, like this young lady here. This is Silas, and he's a strong man of God. He's I think he was 21 when I took this photo, and never owned a Bible, never owned his own personal copy of the Bible. Would always just have to borrow someone else's or use the congregation's big copy of the Bible. And he's excited. So thank you. If you're watching this and you gave towards that goal of getting them Bibles, thank you so much. And this is some of the youth having a Bible study. They're looking at Leviticus chapter 23, which is the Moedim, the holy days, the feast days of the Lord. And they're looking at those and studying those. So it's just really cool. Thank you so much. So let me go back to my main. One of the things we had the opportunity to do when I was there was immerse a lot of new believers. And this is kind of just a quick snapshot of what it looked like. We drove about an hour to the nearest body of water, and it's kind of like this river/creek on the side of the road. And one of the pastors from the nearby fellowship is facilitating their immersion and teaching them the importance of being born again and immersing in water, doing a mikvah. He's explaining all that to them and praying with them. And these young men are all new believers, never been immersed before. They're new Talmudim.
And when they come up the third time, we should all applaud for them and celebrate them.
You heard, that's Lusoga you heard being spoken there. He was translating for me. Let's see if I can fast forward. Many of these people have never been fully submerged in water in their entire lives.
Okay, applaud that.
It's papyrus there in the background. You can see papyrus growing. So, yeah, like I said, many of these people had never been fully submerged in water before. They just don't have bathtubs, you know? They don't have like bodies of water like this nearby to where they go swimming. There's no swimming pools really that they, ever go swimming in. So it was really an intimidating and new experience for many of them. So this is a really pretty picture of the countryside here in Uganda, the papyrus and the thunder clouds out there in the distance. Uganda is a beautiful country. And that's one of the things we did when I was there in Uganda last. Another key, I'm just kind of skimming through some of these photos here, but another neat phenomenon that's taking place here in the city of Iganga is, I mentioned that there's 85% Muslim population in the city of Iganga. And this man right here was one of the Muslim sheiks. He is a Muslim preacher, or was a Muslim preacher, and he would participate and preach at Muslim crusades where they try to bring in Christians and make them Muslims. And this man is now a believer and follower of Yeshua. His name is Gan Shafiq, and I did an interview with him. If you'd like to go to our website and our congregation, dothanmessianicfellowship.com, and click on the audio tab, I actually did an audio interview with him and got his story of how he came to faith in Messiah Yeshua. It's a neat story. We just don't have time to talk about it today. Something neat that he's doing, though, because he was a sheikh, because he was a Muslim preacher, he's now going back to the crusades at which he used to preach, and he's teaching them about Yeshua and about the importance of being obedient to the Torah. And he has since led this man here and this man here, and probably many more since I've been there. It's been a few months. He's since led them to faith in Messiah Yeshua. This man is funny. His name, I said, "What is your name?" And I introduced myself to him, and he says, "My name is Saddam." And he says, "Are you scared of me?" And I said, "No, I'm not scared of you." But so just really cool guys, and now they're all going back and trying to lead other people and teach them about the gospel of Yeshua. And he says one of the things now, as he's a follower of Yeshua, he says, "I'm so full of joy, so full of joy." And so that's just really neat. I guess I'm going to close out this video with a video here of John Swaga talking. But before I do, I just wanted to let you guys know you're always welcome to email me with questions or write me on Facebook with any questions you may have. I plan to continue to go back to Uganda. I keep saying I'm going to go one more time and that's it. But I go there and I just fall in love all over again with the people and just the presence of our Creator, that it's just, it's so overwhelming. Be around people who have a faith that is unshakable, a faith that is pure, a faith that's refined, a faith that is in constant danger of physical persecution from those around them. And to be around that and to experience that, man, it just it's like taking a pair of jumper cables, you know, to your spiritual battery and jump starting it all over again. It's on par with going to Israel. And I want to throw out an invitation if you're interested in going to Uganda with me. You know, I'd be interested in traveling with one or two other men, preferably, just because we can get around a little bit easier as men. Just the culture's a little bit different there. But if you're interested in traveling with me, please email me, gabrielrutledge@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook or get my cell phone number and call me. I do plan to go back probably January of 2021. I'll go back and visit for another 2 weeks to a month. So the other thing too, you know, if you don't want to visit, just continue to be in prayer for the believers there. Like I said, they're under threat of persecution, you know, all the time, and they need protection. They need divine protection. You know, the Muslim community is tolerant of them, and they're not violent or anything like that towards them. But as more and more Muslims leave the faith and embrace the faith of Yeshua, the faith of the apostles, they will experience more fierce persecution. So I want to thank you guys, to those who have given, those who have prayed. You know, thank you for your interest in what's going on there. I don't know all of you, but I look forward to meeting you one day, and it'd be great if I can get up there. Some of you are watching from Indiana, I believe it is. And I think that's just so cool that this idea, like I said, this harebrained idea of mine has made it all the way to Indiana. And yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm so honored to be a vehicle of God's goodness and God's blessing in the land of Uganda. So thank you all for watching. Let me find this last video I wanted to show you all here of John Swaga.
Shalom, brethren. I'm Pastor John Swaga, the congregation elder for Base Yeshua. On behalf of the congregation here, we send you greetings, all the people of Dothan Messianic Fellowship, for the love that you always exhibit to us. We are so grateful for sponsoring our beloved teacher, Brother Gabriel. He is very excellent, very lovely, very humble, but very intelligent. So we really thank you for the help. Thank you for funding this building. Thank you for the land. We thank you for this water project. Indeed, the place is very beautiful.
So let me pause this real quick and explain what's going on back here in the background. This is a water tower, essentially. They pump water out of the ground from this well that we drilled them, and they pump it into these big black cisterns where it pressurizes, but also it heats up using the sun, and so that then comes down and it goes back into these washrooms back behind here. So all this is new since my first visit. But these washrooms have showers and toilets and things like that, which is, again, very uncommon for this area. So he's just saying thank you for all this that you've given, and we appreciate the love that you've shown.
Thank you for all the love that you always send to us. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, I remain John Swaga. Thank you.
So, again, guys, thank you for watching, and I hope this hasn't bored you to death. But if you have any questions, gabrielrutledge@gmail.com. You can comment on this video. You can find me on Facebook or find my cell phone number and give me a call. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and shalom.